She's an award-winning YouTuber and best-selling author obsessed with helping you go after the life you want.
I like it.
Join her as she seeks out the stories and strategies.
Give me every little detail.
Of extraordinary people who found success.
I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God.
Welcome to Detail Therapy with Amy Landino.
Then typically I just literally sit on my sofa and just think about, it's gonna sound dumb, about how awesome my life is. I try to do that for at least a half an hour because, you run a business. It's super stressful. The whole day is gonna be super stressful. There's a million reasons why I should hate my life because of all the problems that come through the day. I really try and take 30 minutes first thing in the morning.
Good morning, good life. Welcome back to Detail Therapy. You just heard a little piece of my conversation with Nathan Kloster. In this episode, we're talking about money. As an accountant, Nathan definitely knows the ins and outs of money and your financial situation. He brought a lot of great tips for managing your finances, especially as a business owner. What it takes to work for yourself. There's a lot of things to consider when you decide to take the big jump and represent yourself both in business and in life and not have to answer to anybody else. And a lot of that has to do with really knowing how to take care of your finances so you can achieve your goals. So we're talking about that. And responsibility, having the responsibility of your money and your taxes and all these other things that we would love to avoid and how to take care of them the right way. So excited to get into this. We have a lot to get into today, but for those of you who are new to the show, my name is Amy Landino and I will be your host. I'm a YouTube creator, podcaster, business coach, public speaker, and best-selling author. I'm here to help you go after the life you want. You can find out more details about me at youtube.com/AMYTV. I'm so excited to share this chat with you. I think it's going to be really interesting for those of you who've been thinking about business or thinking about side hustling, specifically just from a perspective of getting your money right, because we all know this is a tough subject to ask about. And that's why we get the accountants on to have this conversation. So I think you'll find it really interesting if that's the case. I have to say, I'm recording this on a Friday and oh man, I'm so, you know how you just like, you're so glad the week's over. That's how I'm feeling right now. Not because I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so, I don't ever like to waste time. And I also don't like to not reflect and appreciate every moment. But man, we got through some really tough parts of getting the book done this week. And it makes me so happy. Like literally yesterday, we got done recording the audiobook, which is always exciting for the podcast listeners to hear, right? The audiobook is done. How exciting. And I swear, as soon as I said the last word, which of course, by the way, the last word is the dedication and the acknowledgments, which is always the hardest part for me to record because I want to cry through the entire thing. It's like I'm finally done and now I have to dedicate this to people and I'm so happy to do that. But oh my God, I'm going to cry. So like by the time that was done, there was like a 10-pound weight lifted off of me. Like think about something that you've done lately or in the past that was just such a huge task that even if you weren't done with the entire thing, that one part of it that is really the nitty gritty difficult part to do is finally off of your back. At first it's writing the manuscript, and then next is like I have to say each and every one of these words out loud on a recording for the standards of outside parties like Audible and this engineer guy. And it's just, oh gosh, it was just so huge. I could literally feel the weight off me. It was great. Last night I felt so much better. This morning I was like, yeah, let's go, powering through work. It's just like really fun to get re-energized. When you finish a project, it feels great. So that's where I'm at right now. Very, very excited for an evening tonight with my husband, who I haven't seen that much because we've both been traveling on opposite schedules. So we're going to have a nice glass of wine tonight and just sit in our small milestone wins within a big project, because that's what we all should do when we achieve them. But first, you are going to hear about finances, okay? Because you've got to take care of that too if you really want to sit in your wins. So let's just get into it now with my next guest. Nathan Kloster is the CFO of Done Wisely, an accounting firm whose bookkeeping, budget, and tax work helps really busy entrepreneurs control the chaos and make proactive business choices. Nathan has also been my accountant for my entire self-employed career. And so I'm very excited to have him on so we can talk about the kind of silly, dumb questions that I like to ask him so that you can hear what the answers of them are. Because if you don't know, you don't know. So let's ask the questions. Let's get into it. Nathan Kloster, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Why do you do what you do?
It's an exciting life. I get to work with a lot of different businesses, see a lot of different things. I've had a lot of opportunities, including this podcast. I've been invited on crazy trips. It's just really fun being around the entrepreneur community.
I have been working with you for so long. I mean, like, it's one of my favorite things about having a business is that you have been helping me with my accounting, which I feel like you're helping me with like business in general. I'm like, you're my accountant, but I feel like it's so much more than that. And you like somehow just like knew who I was through a mutual contact and was like, I want to help you out. And you've been helping me out for like almost 10 years.
People will freak out. We've known each other since like the very beginning.
I know.
When we first both started.
It's just so crazy to think about. And I'm so excited we made this work because there's so much that people don't realize about how to take care of their money and how to take care of their accounting and do business right, especially this day and age with entrepreneurism where it is. And even, that word being an entrepreneur being so skewed. A lot of people don't really understand even if they are one or not. They just say it and they assume it's true. So before we get into all that, because I do kind of want to focus a little bit on the business side of things, because that's your bag, on how we can do that better on accounting and taxes and the money side. Sure. But how did you even start? How long have you been in the business?
Been doing accounting for about 12 years now. Working specifically with small businesses, medium-sized businesses too. Done Inc. 500 companies all the way down to your small mom and pop restaurant, which we both had a mutual client on that one.
We've had mutual clients before.
Yeah.
Oh.
But yeah, so I've been doing it for quite a long time. I've seen a lot of different things. I've seen people that have done it really, really well, and I've seen the people that have done it really, really poorly. And there are some definite similarities between the ones that do it well and the ones that don't.
How did you even decide to get it started in this? I feel like it's a really high stress job.
It's really high stress. Basically, I started out at Ernst & Young, and probably within about 3 weeks, I knew that was not the life I was going to live. 100-hour weeks. So basically, you can't outwork anyone at Ernst & Young. Everyone works as hard as you can possibly imagine. You will never compete a work ethic alone. So I was like, I can't do this. And so I quit. And then I went to a small little firm in Columbus, Ohio. And they told me I could basically get 10% revenue share for every client that I brought to the firm. And that did not make any sense to me at all. I was like, why would I give you 90% of the revenue when I can literally do this myself? And so I left. And with basically only 2 years experience at a real firm, I went on my own. And I've been doing it for over 10 years ever since.
How did you start finding your first clients?
Well, that was the interesting thing. You and I both have a mutual friend. He gave me my shot. It was a mortgage company in Columbus, Ohio. And to this day, that guy still gives me a lot of great business advice. We all have mentors. He's still a mentor of mine. He gave me a shot and introduced me to a lot of people in Columbus. And that's where it all starts. So it only starts with just one person. One person can literally start your business with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think making sure that you're following up, like somebody can introduce the entire world to you, but what are you doing? I mean, that is a big thing. And I think there's going to be a continuing theme here of just like, if you're thinking about starting a business or freelancing, a couple things could fall in your lap every now and again. But the reality is you have to work really hard for somebody to want to work with you that bad in the first place. And then secondly, you do have to sell yourself. And even if that means just following up with people, building relationships with people, and it's not going to be the time right now, but then they might say, hey, yeah, you know what? We need a new accounting professional. Like, let's talk to Nathan because he's, been around and he checks in on us every once in a while. So,
well, and I think the other point is like, you have to be able to find people that are going to grow into something. You have to be able to identify those people that are going to make it. So like you and I, when we first started out, we were still very young in the business. 10 years later, we've been doing this for a long time.
I've been doing this a while.
And who knew, right? But I knew when I met you that you were going to grow into something way more than where you were at that point. And that's what I built my entire career on.
Thank you. That's really nice of you to say. I mean, like, I don't know how you knew that, because at the time I was like, wait, what? Like you really, you knew I needed the help because I was just getting started. And so much so that you were like, listen, like, let me just do this for you for free for a minute, because you've got to make sure you do this right and set yourself forward. And I think that was very clearly coming from a gut check. And if there's anything I can teach about client work specifically, it's, you know, in your gut, no matter how much that client's going to pay you for what you do, you know, in your gut, if it's going to be a good client, meaning if it's going to be somebody you enjoy. For the most part, working with, client work is still client work. It's work.
It's work.
But every single time I felt in my gut, either because it wasn't enough money because they weren't valuing it the way I was valuing it, or they were going to pay all kinds of money, but I just had a feeling I was always right. I was always right that the client that you thought was going to nickel and dime you and take up every second of time that they did not pay for was going to try. And the ones that were a dream to work with were pretty good to work with.
Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because you can have a client that pays you, say, 50 grand a month, and they will take all your time, and you will never build a business even with the 50 grand a month. Now, I mean, you probably still take the 50 grand a month.
Yeah, you're still like, okay, we got runway. We have to do something with this.
Yeah. But it's not, and sometimes you have that client that pays you $200 a month, and you know what? They never call you. They never bother you. And you basically make $200 a month for doing a half an hour's worth of work. And that's it. And those are good clients. So,
man, the problem was when I was having the $200 a month clients that wanted to talk every day.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, and that comes from a lot of business experience in that scope of work, scope creep, you know, not letting people make up their own rules of what your relationship is. So that's a whole different road I think that we could go down. But there's a lot of good lessons there. Anyway, so thanks for feeling in your gut that I was promising and I was going to be a good client. Because, but since we are really talking to small businesses and freelancers on this one, even if you're not necessarily one of those two things, but you're thinking about starting your own thing, it's very important to recognize that any money that comes in is money that is taxed and is money that you need to manage well. So even if you have a full-time job and you're going to do something on the side, I actually went to my Shine Squad and asked what they thought, because I thought, you know, I'm sitting down with an accountant. What questions do you guys have if you're not talking to one already? And Megan Kelly asked something really great. She said, how is tax for business changing now that everyone is an entrepreneur? Like I said, the entrepreneur word is starting to become the word, but it's not always. I was just talking with Michael Bostic at the Skinny Confidential yesterday, and he was saying, you know, entrepreneur is somebody that's building something from the ground up, that's building something that's all their own. A lot of times people are calling themselves entrepreneurs and they're not even that. They're really freelancing, even no matter how big their LLC is getting, how much the revenue is. But I do imagine, and I've been through some tax situations with you, where it's crazy to see how the government isn't like 1,000,000% there all the time, caught up on how fast this world is changing.
Exactly.
So I guess what does that look like, to answer her question? How is tax for business changing now that quote unquote everyone is an entrepreneur?
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there. You know, I have clients who think they can write off their clothing.
I asked you that once for sure.
You did. Yeah. And you know, there's a lot of people who spread misinformation. People who are not, they may even be accountants, but they're not tax accountants. And a lot of the things, I guess what I see a lot is a lot of these like freelancers and young entrepreneurs, they think that they can do all the things that the big corporations do. They think that I have a business now because they've been sold that. They've been sold on the idea that you start a business and you get all these benefits tax-wise and so on and so forth, right? And then it's just not true. I mean, when you are a business that does 50 grand a year, you are not going to do a corporate inversion by having your business done in Ireland versus America. It's just not going to happen. So the biggest thing is to do the basics, right? Like really do the basics. Understand that you're responsible for all your own taxes now. There's no one, like, biggest thing that people get like shocked about is self-employment tax. Basically, every dollar of profit you make, you need to put 30% aside into a separate bank account and just understand that is not your money. And I'm going to go ahead and recommend a book right now, even though it's not necessarily my favorite, but it is a really good book. It's Profit First. And I can't remember the guy's name.
Mike Michalowicz.
Yeah.
Great book.
It's a great book. And really what's so great about it is he's really explaining the segregation of money, making sure that you're putting money aside in separate accounts, and it's going to be used for these different things. And one of those is taxes, because it's not your money. And that's where, you know.
And it's just a matter of time. It's a matter of time. Even in those first couple of years, from my experience, it was such a weird feeling because I was like, okay, I no longer have a regular paycheck. So I am no longer having taxes withheld.
Yep.
I am now getting 100% of what I'm charging clientele. It's coming to my bank account. I'm cashing that check. And I know that some of that money needs to be paid in taxes because I've always paid taxes, just in a different way. And you don't have to pay it right away. Because it's like, who's asking? No one's knocking on your door. Nobody's saying, hey, you need to withhold that. Nobody's holding you to that. The government will, because they're going to say at the end of the year when you file your taxes, like, okay, how much did you make? If you haven't been pulling money out and paying us on every 2 weeks like you used to, you're going to have to pay that bill later. And I remember that first year, I didn't make any payments in taxes until I filed my tax return. And I was like, this is how much I made on my first year on my own. And it was like, okay, great. This is how much you owe. And I was like, whoa, okay. Like again, like when you're first year in business, you'll take any money that comes your way. I didn't make that much. Like, let's be honest. Right. And my tax bill, I actually am super grateful for what that first year tax bill was. Cause I was like, that's not so bad. Yeah. There were benefits, but that self-employment tax is pretty big. Like that's a big amount of money.
Yeah. It's nearly 8%.
Yeah.
So it's really big and it shocks a ton of people. And I guess the biggest point is people get into entrepreneurship because they want to control their life. They want to live their dreams, right? Freedom, all that stuff. But entrepreneurship is actually the ultimate in adulting because with all that freedom, it comes all the responsibility to you. Like you said, no one's going to knock on the door and say, hey, where's your tax payment?
Right.
Your boss is not going to withhold
even
the
taxes. Even the IRS, when they come knocking, they're like, yes, we sent you a formal letter in the mail and it was certified. So we know you got it.
Right.
Just checking to see if you're going to pay that.
You want to pay that now? Or
it's so bizarre to be like, okay, yeah, of course. Sure. Yeah. You seem nice.
and what's funny is you don't get a phone call from the IRS.
Right.
You just get the letters.
Exactly. Which is why so many people give up their identity on accident. Cause they're, know, those scary IRS calls that are fake.
Yeah.
I remember I called you about that once. I was like, someone said they called from the IRS and I owe my entire life to them and that they're going to arrest me later today.
And I said, nobody will ever call you from the IRS.
No one's ever going to call. You need to know this, people. No one's ever calling you from the IRS.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. We should drive that point home.
Please.
Nobody is ever going to call you from the IRS. Never going to happen.
If they did, and I will say this, I did have one phone call and I was on edge when they called. Because I was like, no one calls from the IRS. That is the rule. But I had a piece of certified mail that it got circled back somehow. And they couldn't get in touch with me because there was an address issue. So they did call. But you can always say in that situation, what is your identification number or something? What, as a representative of this, of the IRS, like what is your, like, how can I make sure that you are who you are? Because 99.9% of the time, the IRS is absolutely not going to call you.
Yeah. And I know that you live in a pretty secure building, but like what's more common, if you really ignore the letters, you're probably going to get like a federal marshal at your door. That's way more common.
They're going to find you. It's not going to be a phone call.
And even more common is they will find you through people you're working for. So if you're getting 1099 or you get a W-2 from some other business, they will contact that business and they'll send them a letter and they'll say, you can no longer pay that person. Whatever you owe them, send it to us instead. So they will find you, even if you don't respond.
And they will kill you. I'm just kidding. It's not Liam Neeson.
But you know,
I had to. I can't.
I will say one thing, and this is a good point for everyone out there too, is that the IRS is not as bad as people think. They are actually normal people who are very cordial and very nice. They're not the junkyard dog who's beating your door down. And so if the IRS calls you, you need to talk to the IRS.
Just talk to them.
Just talk to them.
I've had conversations with them. They're kind people who report to a job. And especially when you work for a government job.
Can you imagine?
Their life is very mundane. And, you know, I started to really understand that as a lot of my revenue that was coming in the first few years was coming through PayPal. And this was really a big heyday for PayPal where not only were people sending money to people they knew through PayPal, but it was, you know, people are selling things on Craigslist and, you know, we are now using online services for this. And my clients were paying pretty big invoices through PayPal because even though you're going to pay a cut to PayPal, in some situations it made sense to just pay a little bit of a fee in order to get paid more on time and
Yep.
more regularly. So it looks funny to the government when they see your revenues coming from PayPal,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
it's really coming from someone else. So that's what opened my eyes about it was, oh, wow, they're a little bit behind. Because if you're talking to a normal person who works at a government job and they're now needing to understand the new state of entrepreneurship and using PayPal for, there's a huge learner's curve there. So
Absolutely.
they're just normal people. If you explain what's going on, if you don't know what's going on, wait on hold for a really long time, talk to somebody at the IRS,
Yep.
and they're happy to explain it to you, even if you don't
Yeah.
have an accountant next to you. And you should get an accountant if you're taking this more seriously. But they will explain it to you. They'll tell you what you can do. They'll tell you when you're in hot water, and they'll tell you how to get ahead.
Yeah. They literally have to tell you the law. They can't
Exactly.
lie to you about it. So, and the thing about it is all those calls are recorded. So if you ever want, I mean, I don't know why you would, but if you ever wanted to, you could subpoena those phone calls. So they're going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you the way the law is. And honestly, it's in their interest to help you. They just want you to pay your tax, and they're not going to try to bury you.
Just pay the darn
Just-
bill.
just please
we
pay it.
have
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
Like-
They're like, I just want a paycheck. Please pay your taxes.
yeah, that would be really great. Could you just, that bill that came in the mail that's, from
Yeah.
the federal government, could you just pay that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So with that being said, I mean, is that some of the biggest thing that we're looking at is crazy with taxes changing now that there is a lot of side hustle, small businesses growing in a couple of years time into massive companies? Like, are taxes different now because of all that?
Actually, they're different because of Trump's tax changes. I won't go into detail on that because it's pretty sophisticated, but there's a lot more benefits to just the entrepreneur community from those tax cuts. I had literally one client save over 200 grand as a result of those cuts. Yeah.
But who does that start to affect? Like, what size business are we talking about actually is going to benefit from that?
It's going to be that person. Once you get to that first employee, that's when it's going to start to help.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you have somebody on payroll.
You have someone on payroll, even if it's just part-time, at that point, there's some things that we can do that, will reduce your tax liability.
Okay.
It's not for everyone, it really isn't. But for those that are growing into having staff, employees, that kind of thing, it will definitely benefit you.
Okay. So let's just kind of talk to somebody. Maybe they do have people on payroll, but they're more than likely freelancing, or they're starting a small business, but it's mostly a one-man show or one-woman show.
Yep.
What are the biggest mistakes you see being made in those first couple of years, especially year one when you're on your own?
Yeah. So, not spending money on things of value, and you just touched on one of them. So, like PayPal, right? People are like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to pay 3% to get my money."
Sure.
Pay the 3%.
Yeah. Why do you think that? Because who wouldn't love to have that 3%, especially if it's a big invoice?
Right. What happens is people will slow pay you. They won't pay you right away. And you're waiting, like 60, 90, sometimes 120 days, which is 4 months. And, you're waiting for that, what seems to you like a ton of money, like $1,500, $2,000. But to the business that you're working with, they're like, we'll just get to it when we get to it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you give them a means to pay you electronically, even if it costs you a little bit of money, just pay it because they'll pay it so much faster. No one wants to send you a check.
Exactly. Even if it is a company that is sophisticated enough, a client of yours, it's sophisticated enough that's like, we can pay electronically. We also can cut a check, and you request that check, you could get that check. It's like, it's going to take so long. And even they probably don't prefer the check because who knows when you're going to cash it.
Right.
Everybody wants their financials to be updated quickly. And electronics do that. I was just telling you, I went to the Beverly Hills Hotel for lunch yesterday, and their power went out, and they were so embarrassed because they had to use that old credit card scanner.
Yeah.
And you could see they were all freaked out. Like, what if people's credit cards don't go through when we run these later?
Right.
And because that's real. You can have updated financials as soon as they run that credit card to your PayPal invoice. They prefer it. If they can't afford to pay their invoice, that's a totally different subject. And the form of payment is not going to affect that.
Yeah. And to that point, for the people that are just starting out, they can't afford to hire a bookkeeper and all those kind of things. If you set up everything electronically, most of your bookkeeping will be done for you. I mean, QuickBooks is really good about that now. I mean, if you set it up to where you get credit card payments, you can get credit card payments through QuickBooks. It'll automatically record those. If you set up, I don't necessarily recommend it, but they have a bill pay feature now through QuickBooks, really good. That will record all the bills for you. So that kind of stuff, even though it seems like 3% is a lot, you're saving money on the back end.
It's so much, specifically for those of us who are listening right now, who are excited about the potential of taking their creative venture and turning it into something that could support them financially, to not have to lose sleep at night of whether or not your bills are getting paid because of your efficiencies. I remember the lunch we had when we sat down and you were like, Amy, why are you bringing me spreadsheets? And I was like, because, I promised they're up to date. Like, I get it. Like, I did all the math for you. No. You don't understand. Like, why aren't you on like FreshBooks? And I'm not even on QuickBooks. I don't even know the difference. FreshBooks is still supporting my business.
Yeah, FreshBooks is good enough.
Totally fine.
It really is.
And now they've even gotten better about how they take payments. I think they go through Square. I think they either go through Square or something else. And that's gotten more efficient. I remember the reason I wasn't on it at the time, because I told you, I was like, hey, it's really ugly. I don't like it. But then it must have been like, I hadn't looked at it in a while. And suddenly I went home that day, I saw the software and
With
I was
FreshBooks?
like, they made it better in a year's time. And all of my expenses are linked. I link my credit cards and my bank accounts that are associated with business only to my FreshBooks account. So I know that when I run a business card, that expense is going to go straight into the software. So I don't have to spend all this time thinking, oh, what did I spend money on this month? I have to go back. I have to spend 2 hours on my own accounting. Even having an accountant, even having a bookkeeper, that's peace of mind that everyone's on the same page. You just have somebody to double check everything and make sure you're covered. The software is there. And I might pay a little bit more money to FreshBooks now per month because of how much revenue I bring in. I believe that's how they do it. But it started out as $30 a month. And that is I will pay that fee every day. And I only have to pay it every month because of the peace of mind that is there.
And you touched on a couple other points too. So like, having a credit card that's dedicated to your business that you never use for personal reasons at all is huge, because basically, even if you don't have any software at all, if you literally pay everything through your credit card and all that's doing is just hitting your credit card, like your online statement, it's good enough actually.
Right.
Because at the end of a year, an accountant can figure that out and do your taxes for you. And then if you have like, again, a separate business banking account and all your like revenues being deposited in there, then you're safe from a tax perspective. An accountant can figure it out pretty quickly. It's not going to cost you a ton of money, but it's still not going to help you run your business.
Right.
That's the big thing. That's where FreshBooks, I think those reports in there for, especially like a freelancer, they're very helpful, knowing what a P&L is and that kind of thing.
And it's so great. I didn't know what a P&L was, but now I do, because it's like, it's a button that you press. Every single invoice is in there. Whether somebody actually needs an invoice to pay me or not, I register an invoice for any money that's coming in. So all the revenue is being kept track of. All the expenses are being kept track of. And then the P&L is up to date. Profit and loss. Here's what you spent. Here's what you made. Here's how you're doing. You know, if you look at your profit, look at the 30%, look at the 20 to 30% you need to be putting aside. You know, you're going to have to pay that. What about, is there a general rule for, because electronic is so efficient, is there a general rule for what receipts you do need to hang on to? Which is another thing about FreshBooks, should totally sponsor this episode, but FreshBooks has the ability to upload a PDF for specific expenses in case it's a big enough purchase that's like, well, let's have a couple of other documentation here to make sure that everybody knows what's going on.
So in terms of documentation, the IRS requires that you have a receipt for literally everything. Like, it doesn't matter how big or small. I mean, they're not gonna make a threshold because, you know, it'd make the law ambiguous.
Sure.
So the law is, if you spent it and it's a business expense, you need to have a receipt. Credit card statements are not sufficient. So just because you have, you know, Adobe on your credit card statement, that is not a sufficient receipt to write off as a business. You must have the actual email that Adobe sends you every month for your $15 subscription to Adobe, right? You know, that being said, no one has every receipt, right? No one has that.
Literally nobody.
Literally nobody. So if you're in an audit and, I can't promise you that they're going to accept it, but if you can substantially prove, or you have other receipts for the same kind of purchases, then yeah, it's going to work out for you. But if you make a focus to keep every receipt that you have for every business expense that you incur, you're going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where FreshBooks helps, because believe it or not, uploading those into FreshBooks makes your life so much easier long-term.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you ever are audited, you will just be able to go to FreshBooks. They'll ask about what's that expense for. You'll have the receipt right there uploaded. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
And that's honestly where most people get into trouble, is the record keeping. Worst case scenario, make an email folder, in Gmail or whatever, all your receipts, just call it receipts, put it in that folder. If you get paper receipts, sounds cliche, but get a shoebox and just throw your receipts in there.
Okay, but what if I just want to take a picture and scan it into like Evernote so that it's paper, but it's also just, now I can upload it as a PDF if I do that.
Yep.
That's like the thing. We always have the phone on us. So
Exactly.
if you're on a business trip and you went and bought Starbucks for your team, take a picture of the receipt if you think you're going to lose it.
Or buy it through the Starbucks app, because the receipt's right there in the app.
I love the app much.
Yeah. So like any means, all the receipt has to have is the date and the detail and the amount.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. So you don't have to have like a big elaborate thing. And electronic copies are good, paper copies are good. As long as you have those three things, you're fine.
Perfect. Yeah. See, I hate those receipts floating around in my purse. I don't care how important my business trip is. Like, I'm going to take a picture. It's going to go to a specific Evernote file.
Yep.
And then that way, when I get back home and I'm trying to update FreshBooks with the proper PDFs that I need for receipt proof, I can put them right there with the expenses in the accounting software. And that's so much faster than trying to add up every other thing I did.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably like a Zapier out there or something like that. But if you use like a Adobe Scan, you just literally can make a PDF right there on your phone. I don't keep any receipts, just for the world to know. Like the
accountant does not keep any receipts, everyone.
I literally just take a picture if I take a business meal or something, I just take a picture receipt through Adobe Scan.
Do you like make a note at the top of the receipt, something like when you're signing it, you like make a note to yourself of what it is?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I just scan it with Adobe Scan on my iPhone, and then it goes into my Adobe Docs, and then that goes into Dropbox from there.
Simple.
Yep.
Totally simple. Okay, so maybe if someone hasn't started yet because they haven't started their business yet, or they have and they're like, oh crap. Okay, so what should I have done from the start? What are some things that I'm about to start my business financially? What are 2 to 3 things I need to get in place right now so we do this right from the start?
Okay, so the one thing I hear all the time is, should I form an LLC?
Yeah.
Right? Everybody always asks that. Like, should I form an LLC? It's the number one question. When you're first starting out, what you should focus on is getting your first client,
Mm-hmm.
and then your second client and your third client. And this is something, what's that organization? I think it's like SBE or something in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
This is something that like the small business something.
Yeah,
council.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah.
This is something that I learned from them actually was keep everything as simple as possible in the beginning. Don't overcomplicate it, because getting things started is much easier than unwinding those things. So like starting an LLC is much easier than shutting an LLC down.
Yes.
So don't do that just yet. Get your first client, get your second client. And once you start to feel like you got a little bit of traction, you got a little bit of money coming in, then start figuring those things out. Before you do any kind of businessy stuff, go to the bank and just set up another personal account. Doesn't need to be a business account. Just set up another personal account.
Because if you don't have an LLC, you can't start a business account. So
Right.
you really are just talking about a separate personal account that you're saying, this is Amy Landino professional
Yep.
versus Amy Landino personal, paying my rent, things like that.
Yep. And just have all your income go into that account from your clients, and pay all your expenses out of that account. Like if you're using a credit card, which is the next thing, is not every credit card, but a lot of credit cards will give you a second credit card with a different number. It's the same account. It's just a different number. And you can go ahead and use that just for your business expenses. So you still have the same credit line. It's just you have 2 separate accounts.
I didn't know that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And so what it does is it's an automated way to segregate your business expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And then make sure you pay those credit card payments from your business account. Those are really the 2 big things that you do when you first start. The third thing is, and the most important thing from a tax perspective, is knowing that you're supposed to make quarterly payments to the IRS. So your first year, you get a little bit of lenience on that, but you can still end up with a penalty at the end of the year if you haven't paid enough in. So it's something you should talk to an accountant about right away.
Yeah.
But set aside 30% of all your profit. That's why the P&L is so important, because it's not 30% of revenue, it's 30% of profit. So you need to take your revenue, subtract your expenses, whatever you have left over is what you need to set 30% aside for. And that will save you so much heartache come April 15th.
And just thinking about, even when money is tough and cash flow is tough, like just knowing that you've done the math for yourself, here's what we profited, and putting that money away. Even if you're listening to this right now and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't been doing this, it's the end of the year or whatever, just look at what it is. It is what it is. Where is that money? Set it aside. It's not your money anymore. Get ready to pay it to the IRS, because whenever you're filing either that quarterly payment or you're filing your taxes next year or at the end of this year, what are you going to do? You got to pay that out. And you were talking to me before where it's just getting so easy for people when they first start that first year. You realize you owe money because you got away with yourself and got all these clients, brought in all this revenue, didn't save anything. And then, it's not a good idea to not file your taxes. It's not a good idea to ignore it. You've got to do it because it's going to catch up to you at some point.
It doesn't go away. It will never go away.
They know where you live.
They do. They know where you live. They know your phone call. And even scarier, they know who you bank with.
Yes. They can take your money anytime they want.
They could take your money.
They could literally take it whenever they want.
They could literally take your money. So, and that can happen within 12 months. So if you don't pay your taxes within 12 months, they could be reaching into your bank account and just taking the money. So that's really, really super important.
That's way worse than having to write a big check for money to just disappear, especially if it's not even going to pay off the bill and now you have nothing to live on.
Yep.
That's scary. Nobody needs to be in that situation.
No, because you're probably trying to pay your rent at the first of the month when they take your money and now you can't pay your rent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just really good tips. Really, really, really good advice. There's so much more to get into here.
Yeah.
But we have to move on. Before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Shine Squad. Not just Shine Squad. Shine like a boss. If you're somebody that's finding this conversation both simultaneously boring and riveting at the same time because you know it matters to you, you're probably either in business or thinking about getting in business. And the biggest thing that I want to applaud you on is listening to podcasts and educating yourself. Because when you don't have people or resources or thought leaders around you telling you what to do all the time, you've got to find those people for yourself. And that is what we try to achieve in Shine Like a Boss at Shine Squad. Surrounding yourself with other business owners or aspiring business owners who just want to be able to ask the simple questions and get the answers back that they need. As simple as sometimes that they are. Sometimes you just need a little bit of accountability to hold you to it. And that is what we do at this level of membership. Not to mention the fact that you will not get a coach for what I'm charging, because people don't charge a couple $100 a month to coach. It's a group coaching environment. It's a mastermind environment. So everyone is helping each other, which makes it a lot easier on everyone's time. You're not being held to the fire to do some kind of homework or to get on a call that you have to be on, but you have an environment around you that makes you want to do that stuff, that makes you want to work on your business, not just in it. And so that is what we're doing in Shine Like a Boss. I want you to check it out at patreon.com/AMYTV. It is tier 4 of Shine Squad. You can get more details in the show notes of this episode and immediately at patreon.com/AMYTV. That's patreon.com/AMYTV. I'll see you in the squad. Now, back to my conversation with Nathan and ask about your day. So what is it like to be Nathan? When you wake up in the morning, what time is it? And what's your morning routine like?
So people are going to freak out probably because I know there's a lot of chatter around the interwebs about waking up at 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. How do I do it?
Yeah, I'm one of those people chattering a lot about it.
I wake up at 3:30.
Do you really?
Yeah, every day.
Okay, wait. So you live in San Diego?
I do, yeah.
Is that part of the reason?
No. So I was in the Marine Corps and we're early risers in the Marine Corps, typically 4:30. But 4:30 was showtime. That's when you had to be somewhere typically. So you normally get up around 4, but I like to have a half an hour of just kind of personal time. So I get up at 3:30 every morning.
Do you still have East Coast clients where that comes in handy, or is it really just for you?
It really is just for me, but it does come in handy with
Yeah.
East Coast clients, the
Yeah.
time zone difference and stuff. Yeah.
So what are you doing at 3:30?
Yeah.
Hold on.
so,
What time do you go to bed to get up at 3:30? Let's start
typically about 9.
Okay.
Yeah, about 9. And sometimes if it's a late night, it'll be 10, but I try to get into bed. But I used to not do that. I used to just work like 4 hours sleep, 3 hours sleep. But you know what? In the long term, it's not going to work out for
kill you.
It does. It breaks you down. So I try to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, every night, including the weekends. I don't go out a whole lot on the weekends anymore. I still go to bed at 9.
I love going to bed early on a Saturday night.
It feels so good.
It makes me happy.
It feels so good, right?
Makes me so happy.
It does. It really does. Just get the Netflix going, fall asleep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But yeah, 3:30 in the morning, wake up, coffee, first thing,
Always.
always first thing. And then typically I just literally sit on my sofa and just think about, it's going to sound dumb, about how awesome my life is. I try to do that for at least a half an hour because you run a business. It's super stressful. The whole day is going to be super stressful. There's a million reasons why I should hate my life because of all the problems that are going to come through the day. I really try and take 30 minutes first thing in the morning.
Wow.
My life is awesome.
That's a lot. Gratefulness, half an hour,
sure.
which I could totally understand why that matters so much more in your life. Like everybody texting you that's your client, it's their emergency about their financial problems.
Absolutely.
And so that can be a lot. That can bring you down.
Yeah, it definitely can. I mean, most people do not contact their accountant because everything is going great.
How you doing, Nathan?
Yeah, really good to talk to you, right?
Really miss you a lot, buddy. I got this tax bill.
Right. But at the same time, I mean, even with all those problems, it's good to remember that business affords me a life to where I can live in San Diego, to where I have the friends I have, and I'm able to buy the things I want to buy and take the trips I want to take. So it's just important to remember that every single day.
What do you do to stay fit and take care of yourself?
Jiu-jitsu.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
That's something I got into a few years ago. I've been a swimmer my whole life, but jiu-jitsu is, I can't recommend it enough.
This is sounding very California. Do they have jiu-jitsu in Columbus?
They do actually. They do. There's some big gyms out there.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
But it is very California. Southern California is sort of the mecca. I mean, this is kind of where United States jiu-jitsu started,
Really?
right up the road from where we are right now in Torrance. But yeah, it's, if you are a thinker, right? And you like fitness, it's a chess match, except it's a physical chess match. It's not enough to be stronger than your opponent. It's not enough to be faster than your opponent. You have to be able to outthink your opponent as well. And the other side benefit is that it's really, really hard. No matter how good you are really going to be humbled every single day you go there. And so it's nice because you go there, you get humbled, you figure out that, hey, I wasn't that good today. But then the next day you go back and you beat that person who beat you the day before. It's like a metaphor for life. You feel like things are beating you down, but then the next day is your day. And then things are on the up and up. So it's just a good reminder for that too.
I love that. That's a great answer. What about podcasts? Do you listen to any podcasts? Is that like a thing that you do and you're like maybe not doing jiu-jitsu, but like commuting and, California traffic or anything like that?
Yeah. So probably a little cliche, but I listen to Tim Ferriss. Been following him.
That's not cliche. He's an OG.
Yeah. I mean, he's super OG. I bought his book in 2007, right?
I remember buying his book and I had no idea even what I was doing at that point. I was like, this is a great title, 4-Hour Work Week. Okay.
It was a great title, yeah.
Okay.
and I mean, to this day, that book has had a huge influence on my life. I mean, it's a great book even to this day. And then I don't know how much of your audience would be this interested in it, but I listen to Jocko podcast too, Jocko Willink, who's a former Navy SEAL and that kind of thing.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't know who Jocko was, but Blake and Vincenzo told me about him. And I was like, oh, wow, maybe I need to. He wakes up early. He takes a picture of his watch.
Of his watch every day.
I was like, do I need to start taking pictures of my watch to prove that I'm waking up early? I was like, this is the whole
I take
thing.
enormous pride in thinking Jocko wakes up late. So
it's really 4:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
How do you stay? I mean, like, because you're getting distractions all the time with your phone pinging with text messages, people emailing you saying there's this urgent thing, whatever. How do you stay focused and organized throughout the day? Like, is it a calendar? Is it a task list? Is it a project management software? Is it a team? What's keeping you on track for every day at work?
So we use Asana at the firm. That's how we manage all the client tasks and things like that, which also integrates with Google Calendar. So we use that. But I also subscribe, like Jason Fried from Basecamp. He wrote an article, I don't know, like it's probably years ago, but basically his calendar is empty. That's what Jason does. His calendar is empty, and that doesn't work for everybody.
Cannot relate.
Yeah, but it works for me. I don't schedule a bunch of things on my calendar like a lot of people. Like this goes back to Tim Ferriss again. Between Jason and Tim, I schedule 1 to 3 things on my calendar for the day, and if I get those 3 things done through the day, then I am happy. That was a successful day. And no matter what comes my way, I always just come back to those 3 things. The other thing I do is I start off easy. So I don't choose the hard, I mean, everyone has their own thing, but I don't choose the hardest thing in the day to get done first thing, because I don't know, I have to warm up. I don't know. I just look at like exercise to me. So I'll start off something really easy. Like, oh, my client needs me to respond to this tax notice. Okay. I'll write a letter and I'll respond to the notice. Then I'll get into something much, much heavier, like maybe like a really complicated business tax return or something like that.
That's so interesting. So you are waking up so early to start the day, but you're not into the whole eat the frog thing.
No.
You're like, let me get a small win.
Yep.
Let me get a small win.
Yep.
Get my brain moving.
Yep.
This is something that I know like the back of my hand. I'll do that first, then move into the more complicated stuff.
Totally. And what's even funny, it's fun. I just thought of this now that you're saying it, but I do the same thing when I feel like I'm losing in the day. So like when I feel like things are going like sideways, I will just go through my task list and I'll say, what can I do right now that I could achieve right now? And sometimes I have to do 2 or 3 of those things to feel like I'm getting somewhere, but it helps me start to feel like I'm winning again. And then I'm like, okay, I'm in that place where I can start tackling the complicated stuff again.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's a good tip. All right. Well, where can everybody follow you? Can businesses work with your firm? Like, where would they find out more details about that?
Yeah, they can definitely work with our firm. It would be donewisely.com, not spelled traditionally. It's
We'll just check the show notes, but if you want to spell it, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah. But it's donewisely.com. That's where you could find me. Yep, we work with all different types of businesses. So yeah.
Love it. Okay, cool. Well, in just a couple minutes, I'd like to challenge you to the secret show if you're up for it.
Totally.
Okay, you guys can hear that over in Shine Squad. Check it out at patreon.com/AMYTV. But before we do that, my final question. What does it mean to you to go after the life that you want?
Been doing that a long time, going after the life I want. And I'm living it now. And what that was is I just made a very calculated decision that I wanted to be in San Diego. And that was enough. That was it. That's all I needed, was just to be in San Diego. So I live that every day. And my business supports that. So between doing my business and living in San Diego, I live the life I want.
Nathan Kloster, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, let's catch the deets. Entrepreneurship is the ultimate adulting experience. While entrepreneurship might not be for everyone, it is a great way to learn how to manage money, time, and responsibilities in an effective way. Side note, the IRS is not as scary as people make them out to be. They just have a job to do, okay? Work with them. If you have a question, call them. It's their job to answer, and take care of your money so that they're not ever, quote unquote, mad at you. It just means you get a lot of mail. Don't cut corners. Don't skip paying for something of value. Don't skip the time it takes to organize things like receipts or other records. And don't skip on anything that is totally going to benefit your future endeavors. When we think that we can get something free or cheap because somebody is hopefully going to want to help us out, or we think something's completely out of reach because we can't imagine coming up with the money to pay for it, it's not being valued. So if you actually think something is going to move the needle for you, you should be thinking about how valuable it is to you, how much you'd be willing to pay for it, and then pay for it. Or if you can find a way to trade with somebody that you can also offer value to, get creative. Find a way to make it happen. And finally, make time for gratefulness. I just love how Nathan takes this time to reflect, because think about what he does. He literally gets nothing but fire putting out texts about money all the time in his life. Everybody's thing is always an emergency. His clients are always freaking out because either the IRS sent them a letter, or there's some weird tax form they don't know how to do, or they just don't know if they saved enough money this year, whatever it is. He's got a lot of crap coming his way. He's got a lot of great clients too. I'm one of them. I try to be real nice. But also, when you have a type of job that's very, very high energy, high stress, one of the best things you can do is make time for gratefulness. I would argue everyone should do it, no matter how high stress. We make everything high stress, let's be honest. No matter how high stress it is, we should be making time to reflect, to be grateful with, hey, look, I got a lot of responsibility. I've got a lot more I need to do because I'm the owner, but wow, look at all the freedom I have for it. Look at how much money I'm making more than I would in a typical job because I have control. Look at how happy my family is when I'm able to spend a little bit more time with them whenever I can. Be grateful. Sit in that and reflect on it, because that's what's going to keep you going every single day. All right, that's it for this episode. But hey, do you love getting advice straight to those earbuds? I would love to share some simple steps for living your best life every day. And that's in my free audio training, The 7 Essential Details for Going After the Life You Want. To receive this audiogram, subscribe to the podcast and take a screenshot to show you subscribed. Email that screenshot to hello@detailspodcast.com with audiogram, please, in the subject line, and we'll get it right over to you. Also, don't forget to listen to Nathan's secret podcast segment. That is over in Shine Squad at patreon.com/AMYTV, because I publish a new podcast every weekday over there if you are in any level of Shine Squad. Just 5 to 10 minutes to hold you accountable to have a good morning for your good life. 5 a.m. Eastern time, there's a new podcast for you. And today's was Nathan's secret segment. So definitely go check that out. Patreon.com/AMYTV. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. As always, if you would like to discover even more actionable details, head over to AMYTV, visiting youtube.com/AMYTV, or searching for AMYTV in your YouTube app. Remember, subscribe for good vibes, kiss the ones you love, and go after the life you want. Cheers.